Welcome to New Possibilities. I speak truth to power without fear. So, former Seahawk football player Chad Wheeler, he's a white man. He attempted to kill his black girlfriend. He forced his fingers down her throat. He put his hand over her mouth and her nose, crushing her mouth and her nose while choking her with the other hand to the point where this sister passed out. She passed out not only once, but she passed out twice. And he also attacked her in other ways. When she came to, when she regained consciousness, this man said, "You're still alive?" And then he proceeded to try to assault her further. She ran away and she started to call the police. And she told the police that she's being killed. That's what she told the police when she called 911. The police arrived. They attempted to arrest this man. He resisted arrest. They tried to tase him. He resisted that. And eventually they were able to arrest him. And now he's been charged with several things. He's been charged with first-degree domestic violence assault and domestic violence unlawful imprisonment and resisting arrest. And he's out on bail. He paid $400,000 to be out on bail. He's under home arrest. You know, he has a monitoring device connected to him. He's prohibited from visiting or trying to contact his black girlfriend. And he issued a statement shortly after this happened talking about how he was having some kind of manic incident, you know, some kind of breakdown or whatever. And his girlfriend also mentioned that he was bipolar and that he had not been taking his medicine. So I want to just share some thoughts about this. You know, the first thing I want to deal with is the criminal justice system. And this is a prime example of white privilege in the criminal justice system. Because here you have a man who literally tried to kill his girlfriend. And instead of facing attempted murder charges, he faces these lesser charges. If this was a black man doing the same thing to a white woman, that black man would have been charged with attempted murder. And again, this shows the disparities in the criminal justice system. It shows the inequality in the criminal justice system. Also, another thing that I want to talk about is his arrest. You know, here you have a man who resisted arrest, he resisted the tasers, and yet and still the police were able to arrest him without him being brutalized and all that kind of stuff. And that's a good thing. It's a good thing that the police were able to do their job without engaging in police brutality. But the problem is that doesn't happen when it comes to black people too often. Too often, if that was a black man, that black man would be dead. You know, we have situations where black men are compliant with the police and they still end up being victims of police brutality. All we have to do is cite the example of Philando Castile, where he was trying to follow the officer's directions. He even volunteered information, and that brother ended up being shot in the chest and bleeding to death live on Facebook. That's how they treat black people. Or we look at the situation involving Tamir Rice, a young kid, only 12 years old, in the park playing with a toy gun, and the police arrive, and within seconds, that young brother is dead at the hands of the police. And we see this time and time again, and when black people are victims of police brutality, they often blame the victim. They often blame the victim, whereas you got this guy who literally tried to choke out and kill his girlfriend, but yet and still he's not subjected to any police brutality. You have these situations involving like Dylan Roof, where he went in a church and killed 9 black people, and the police arrest him without any kind of incident, without any kind of problem, but black people end up dead when we do simple things like trying to sell some loose cigarettes, when we have things like, you know, like in the case of Eric Garner, or in the case of Walter Scott, when that brother had a broken tail light and he ended up dead over that. Too often, or George Floyd ended up dead over allegations of trying to use a counterfeit $20 bill. That's a prime example of the inequality that exists in the policing system and in the criminal justice system. So that's something that I have to point out. The other thing that I want to deal with is just the question of domestic violence and race, and I'm going to get into the whole swirler piece of this. But, we know that domestic violence is a problem that exists in all groups of people, various races and religions and stuff like that. We know that this is a problem that affects women not only in America but throughout the world. And it's a problem that needs to be addressed. And that's why, I commend uh, the Seahawks for terminating Chad Wheeler's contract and for providing information about resources. I think that that's a major step forward for the NFL because in the past we know there have been many situations where players have been accused of brutalizing women, engaged in domestic violence, and those players continue to play the game and they continue to be on these teams and stuff like that. It's only after the outcry that action is taken. Like we saw in the case of here in Baltimore involving the football player Rice. He knocked out his girlfriend. It was captured on video. The team knew about this information, the owners and all that kind of stuff. And they allowed him to continue to play. It was only after the public outcry, after the video was out and all that kind of stuff that they took action. So I'm glad that this is showing that these teams are more sensitive to these issues because it makes no sense for instance, like in the Michael Vick case, where he was accused of illegally fighting dogs and all that kind of stuff. And he faced a harsh sentence and he was condemned and all that kind of stuff. But when it comes to a black woman, somebody can beat a black woman and they could still play back in the day. And so this is a major step forward for the NFL. And I just hope that they continue to have a zero tolerance policy when it comes to domestic violence. One thing that has to be pointed out is, when this incident occurred, after the incident happened, Chad Wheeler said that he had a manic episode, some kind of mental breakdown or whatever, and that explains his conduct. And also his girlfriend said that he was bipolar and that he had not been taking his medicine. Essentially, she was trying to justify or explain what he was doing. And I'll get to that in a second. So, this issue of domestic violence has to be addressed. It has to be addressed in all communities. And I'm glad that the NFL is dealing with it in some kind of way. The other thing that I have to talk about is just the racial component of this. Here you have a white man who brutalized a black woman. And again, this issue of domestic violence happens to all different types of people. And I'm not saying that, one race or another is more inclined to domestic violence. But the reason why I bring this up, the racial issue, is because too often you have a lot of these people here on YouTube that paint this false narrative. This narrative that suggests that white men are better alternatives than black men, that somehow white men are some kind of knight in shining armor here to rescue the black woman from the evil black man, suggesting that all the black woman's problems are as a result of the black man. The black man is not marriageable material. The black man is this. The black man is that. And you have a lot of these people that rightfully condemn, domestic violence in the black community, but they use that domestic violence in the community to paint this image of the black man as some kind of animal or some kind of brute, as if to suggest that most black men participate in domestic violence, which is a complete lie, a complete fabrication. So when you have situations like this completely dispels this myth that this white man is some kind of savior here to rescue the black woman. You have examples of too often where you have these situations where these white men brutalize black women. And what you have with a lot of these YouTubers, they are not concerned about the plight of black women when the white man is the one abusing the black woman, when the white man is the one mistreating the black woman. They don't do videos about that. They don't post videos about that. They wait for situations involving a black man abusing a black woman or cheating on a black woman, etc., to paint this negative, biased type of image of the black man. It's like the plight of the black woman only matters. Oppression of black women only matters when the one doing the oppressing is a black man. It doesn't matter when it's white men doing it, for the most part, among a lot of these people that promote this swirling stuff. Um, yeah, so that's something that has to be pointed out, just the hypocrisy. You can't claim to be about women's empowerment and women's liberation and at the same time turn a blind eye to the violence committed against black women when the victimizer is a white man. So, you know, the other point is this, like we have to be there to defend our sisters. And I saw like some information on social media about some football players who stepped up, like some male football players who spoke out and stepped up. And, you know, they said some bold things about what they would do to this man and, you know, and all that kind of stuff. They challenged him and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, we need to be there for our women, to defend our women in all situations where they are being victimized, you know, regardless of the race of the person that's doing the victimizing, you know, regardless of the race of the person attacking a person. If we see a black man abusing a black woman, we need to do something to defend that black woman. If we see some, you know, one of these situations like we've seen before here on YouTube, where you've had like these Asian store owners brutalizing black women, we need to stand up in those situations. We've seen situations where a white man has threatened a black woman and all that kind of stuff. We need to be there to protect and defend our women. That's what men do. That's what real men do in societies. That's what a man's role is in the society. And it's time for us to fulfill that role. Even in this situation where this woman finds herself with this white man, I think that we should be there to defend our sisters. And, you know, I just hope that this man faces a harsh sentence. You know, I hope that he's given a harsh sentence for trying to kill this sister. You know, I hope that's what happens. You know, but we can see just based on what's happening here that, you know, they're already laying the groundwork for this man to get off on some kind of mental illness type of defense or something like that. And then it doesn't help that you have his girlfriend basically making excuses for him, saying that he did this basically because he is bipolar and didn't have his medicine. And it just seems, you know, and that's another thing, you know, the fact that even after this, after all this brutality that was inflicted upon her, she still finds herself in the situations where she's explaining why he did something instead of, you know, just condemning what he did. And, you know, I understand that this is something that victims do, like people who are victims of domestic violence, like they often make excuses for their abusers and stuff like that. That often happens. But I think that this speaks to a larger issue, and it speaks to the syndrome, you know, where people, the Stockholm syndrome type of situation, where people begin to identify with their captors, identify with their oppressors, make excuses for their oppressors, and justify what their oppressors are doing. And that whole Stockholm syndrome, it's even reflected in the way a lot of these women here on YouTube deal with situations like this, where they just try to ignore it or they try to make excuses for it. And when they don't make excuses for it, what they try to do is say, you know, they try, as another YouTuber, as the brother Voltron Black pointed out, they try to deflect by pointing to examples of black male abuse of black women. And I just think that, you know, that just shows the weakness in their position, and it shows the, you know, the fallacies in a lot of their arguments and everything. So I just had to share my thoughts about this. Tell me what you all think. Please rate, comment, subscribe, like the video, share the video, hit that notification bell so that you'll know when I post new content on here. Peace and blessings. Have a great evening.